Welcome to Macro Mob. My name is Sean. My co-host is Damien, and today we're joined by Josh Thompson. You can find him on YouTube. Easiest way to find him is you just type in Josh Thompson, inflation or deflation. He has a channel where he tries to educate people on the monetary system, speaks about Bitcoin, the bond market, yield curve, things like that. And we're going to start today's conversation off by Josh explaining to us why our monetary system is inherently deflationary. Josh, if you could just explain to us what is deflation, why you believe our system is inherently deflationary, and what is that response in a system like that from those in positions of power, the elected officials?
Right. So I know this is like completely counter of what most people talk about. You know, you hear like talking heads on MSNBC and like Peter Schiff, they all come out and say things like they print money, the Federal Reserve prints all this money. But the problem is they don't tell you how it happens. They don't tell you exactly what the mechanics of it is. They just want a boogeyman. And in a lot of cases, I'm not trying to put anyone down, they're just they have things to sell you, because that should also tell you how much little money there is, because everyone's trying to sell something to get money. But besides that, so the Federal Reserve does not print money. That does not happen. They print bank reserves. You can't buy anything with bank reserves. Commercial banks print money. And when they print money by people walking into a bank and getting a loan. The problem is that they print the principal and they don't print the interest. So what ends up happening is you have a situation where there's more debt than actual money, and the interest rates eat away at the debt, or it eats away at the money supply, rather to say. So it's constantly consuming itself, and the response you get from political leaders or whatnot is to do stimulus, right? So when we get into a deflationary spiral, they just come in and print, but what they're doing is borrowing money from the commercial banks, and we can get into that a little bit deeper if you want to. But yeah, whenever the markets crash, it's deflationary and the dollar's getting too strong. So in response to that, they spend a whole bunch of money and they call that printing, but it's not really printing.
Good to go. So hold on one second. I think we have a little bit of, I think it's coming around from your end. Right there.
Yeah, can you? For some reason.
Yeah, it's good to go now. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay. Yeah. So within that system, when you're basically saying that commercial banks are the only ones who create money, right? So you go into the bank, you want to start a business, you have to go through an approval process. They say, hey, Josh, you want to go ahead and start this hot dog stand. It looks like you have good credit. You look like somebody that we can trust. We're going to give you $50,000. So they go ahead and they type that into your account. You go home, you look into your account, you have $50,000 to go ahead and start that, right? So now that money just popped up, went directly into your account. It didn't exist before, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna. It doesn't work exactly like this, but to make it easier for people to understand, I'll explain it this way. When you deposit money into a bank, that's a liability to the bank. They have to have a way to generate income. So they immediately take that money out of your deposit account and they give it out to a loan to someone else. That generates an income generating asset on the asset side of their balance sheet, but they still owe you the money at any time when you come to collect it. So they print the $50,000 that they loaned out to someone else back into your deposit account, and that creates an additional $50,000. Now, there needs to be a distinction made here, because physical cash is not the same thing as having digits in your bank account. Those are two completely separate things. It's basically just digital IOUs circulating around. I think we have like $2.5 trillion in physical cash right now, and the rest of the M2 money supply is all digital IOUs, ones and zeros circulate around. It's basically just a ledger. That's it, for Bitcoin people to understand. That's all it is. It's just a ledger. But the problem is the interest that's attached with the debt, because that's constantly eating. If everyone that's getting a loan, yes, it's creating new money, but they all have to pay back that loan with interest. So it's just sucking money out because everyone has to compete. So you got to take somebody else's money to pay off the interest on your loan. And eventually someone's going to fail. And when that happens, that's when the world leaders come out and bail everybody out with all these, helicopter checks and all that.
Right.
Yeah, they're about to send some out now, like gas checks is I guess the new thing,
That's not,
$800 gas
yeah,
checks or
that's
something.
not going to last too long. That the gas prices are not going to. That's my personal opinion, but
Hmm.
if you guys want to go there, we can.
Well, it's just interesting about those gas checks because I wonder if it comes with an agreement that you have to go work at like an oil rig because I'm not sure how that's going to increase the supply. It's just gonna keep up the demand, but we're not going to be able to bring anything more online. So it's strange behavior from people in positions of power, right?
That's something I'm glad you brought up supply because that's something I really wanted to. There's a point I wanted to hit as far as people always talking about inflationary. The dollar is going to die. All this. It's not an inflation issue that we have because inflation is Weimar Republic Germany, and if you go look up the statistics, let's just take gold. It never went down in price while they printed money. Outside of there was 1 month where it did, but other than that, it just skyrocketed. That's not what we experience in the financial environment that we live in now. Prices aren't just going up. I mean, hell, gold went from 2011 all the way until 2020. It decreased in value. That's not something you get in an inflationary environment. That's what you get in deflation because there isn't enough money, there isn't enough liquidity. And I know there's people out there that really believe gold should be 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20, $50,000 an ounce, but that is not supported by any actual evidence. In fact, if you do the calculations, it's exactly where it should be right now. $1,900 an ounce. That's exactly where it should be. And we can get into that too. And I can prove that through easy calculations. It's really simple to prove that gold should be exactly where it is right now.
I wonder too if one of the new boogeyman is inflation, but there's something to the fact that in the past couple of years with the lockdowns or mandates and the break in the supply chain, businesses weren't simply going to continue putting out the same amount of oil or making the same amount of products. And what's happened with the release of some of these stops on our economy is people are just kind of getting back to normal. So the funny thing is, the supply chain hasn't caught up to a little less than normal. And they're sort of watching the markets now. Should they be printing? Should they be pumping out more oil? So the inflation was sort of stuck in the system for a couple of years, it seems, and to kind of blame it on whatever it is, a war, price gouging, seems really dishonest. And I wondered if you have some sort of thoughts about, what this inflation really, where it really comes from. And I guess I'm talking more about from the consumer field, because obviously
right, CPI.
There's the inflation number, and then there's what maybe is real inflation, which is much higher than that, but more just kind of what people are feeling day to day.
So I think the first problem in that is that they call it inflation, but it's not inflation, right? So inflation would just be you continue to print money at a pace that outpaces the growth of debt. So the money becomes less valuable because there's more money than debt, right? And that's not what we have right now, because right now the M2 money supply is 21 trillion, but the national debt's 30 trillion. So if you confiscated everyone's money, there would still be debt. That's not the case what we have right now. What we have right now is just price increases. And it's because demand, which would be symbolizes the growth in population, has outstripped available supply. And of course, that's going to happen when you shut everything down. And China is right now, again, shutting everything down in China because of their cases.
Yeah.
So it's just a function of there not being enough supply. And the question I like to ask a lot of people when they try to fight back against that is, well, do you think it's easier now to start a homestead or a farm, or was it easier in 1870? Do you think it's easier now to start a timber operation in California, or was it easier in 1870?
Right.
What has the government's done to make the situation worse? And what is it that's made the situation worse about there being just less things available with the rise in population?
Yeah, I saw this is apart from the consumer issue, but there was a article recently about the president's big push for solar panels, and the irony about that is that the tariffs against China prevent the very materials that our startup companies need to make those panels, and we just don't have the capacity here. So we have a lot of fledgling businesses who, in order to use that money that they're being given by the government, have to spend it in China to get the materials to jump it. So there's something in that chain that they're not realizing how they're kind of hurting the supply at the same time.
I don't know if that's me, guys. Okay.
Oh, you.
All right. So talking about solar panels, we actually can make the stuff here. It's just more expensive because of our labor costs. As far as okay, let's talk solar panel. It's 2 parts coal, and then they don't actually use silicone. Most people think they use sand. They don't use sand. They use high grade quartz. I believe that comes out of North Carolina. So they basically have to melt the quartz and the coal down together using coal to melt it down. And when you actually take into account how much fossil fuels they had to burn, dig, and mine to create the solar panel, it's actually just cheaper and better for the environment to just use the fossil fuels.
Right.
So I don't know if that's what you were trying to point to, but I got a little distracted.
No, you're fine. I was just, it was just that your comment was kind of how sometimes the very actions that the government is taking is actually hurting the supply. And one thing that, and Sean, did you want to follow up on where you originally were?
Oh yeah, no, I was the only thing that I was thinking about when Josh was kind of speaking. I'm not sure, is that your mic name?
I don't know if it's mine or not. Let me unplug mine and plug it back in.
I'll just mute myself from as.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing that I was thinking about when you were kind of talking about, this isn't inflation, it's pricing increases. You're speaking about inflation by the textbook definition, like an increase in the money supply, right? But kind of 2 things, right? So in that sense, wasn't the 3 stimulus checks that they direct deposited into people's accounts and made those bank reserves, wasn't that actual inflation because that was an increase in the money supply? Or am I thinking about that incorrectly? And then on the other side of that, just to make it digestible for, the vast majority of people here in the States and around the world, they're not going to be able to separate the two. All they care about is that increase in prices. So for them, that is inflation, right? It's just not the textbook example. Their dollar is getting devalued at a rapid pace right now. I just saw that the EIA basically a month ago they said, hey, oil's gonna settle around $80 a barrel. Well, we had this, due to world events. Now they're saying it's gonna settle at over $100 a barrel, right? So that's not coming back down. So they're gonna eat that cost. That's inelastic. We still have a lag effect dealing with food prices. People haven't even seen it at the grocery store. I know for me, last summer, I was like, okay, everything's up 20%. And now we're about to get hit again. So how do you kind of explain that to normal people? How should they be thinking about this? Is this something that you're saying like is going to come back down? Or has your view changed that now with all the nations around the world, they're tightening up now. They're more concerned about their own people at home, and that's globalization. If we're not going to open up the floodgates, those prices aren't going to come down anytime soon.
All right. So I know my view is not popular because of the way everyone's taught what inflation is. And you just hear it all the time on TV. But yes, the textbook definition of inflation is literally what inflation is. What happened with the so-called stimulus and the helicopter money and all that, they didn't print money. So what they did, they just created these pieces of paper that said, this is a bond. Whoever decides to buy this piece of paper, we owe them money on full faith and credit of the United States. So the primary dealers, which are just banks, I know they love to use terms to confuse people. It's just banks. They took all the money that we all had deposited in the banks. They took our deposited money and loaned it to the government. And then they got in return a bond. So yes, that created more money, but it also created more debt. So you get that shock right there of that newly printed money, we're going to call it that. You get that shock of all that money being thrown into the system, coupled with the fact that the world has been shut down. So what we were talking about earlier was supply and demand. You just seriously interrupted the supply portion of that equation. So the supply goes even further down. And then to try to mitigate that, they print all this money, because it's not that there's money printing. What they're actually doing is they're trying to manipulate the value of the dollar. The dollar would be way stronger if they wouldn't have done anything. And in fact, that's what happened. If you go back and look at 2008, the dot-com bubble, the crash of 2020, every single time we get one of these crashes, it's a liquidity event, first of all. So people have a really hard time getting a hold of dollars. But once that crashes, everyone piles all their money into bonds and the value of the dollar shoots up. So to manipulate the value of the dollar to make it go lower, they print more money by borrowing at the commercial banks. And that is all this is. It's just a scheme to make the dollar less valuable, because the dollar is constantly trying to gain value, because what we talked about earlier with interest rates deflating the amount of available currency. So they constantly have to manipulate that to bring the value of the dollar down lower, so then valuations of everything else can go up. And that wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be something that they would have to do if the population growth rate was still accelerating up, because every successive generation would have more and more people to walk into a bank and get a loan, which would, balloon out the currency supply. But that's not what happened. After the 90s and early 2000s little baby bump that we had there, I'm not going to call it a baby boom because it was not the same level as the baby boom, but we had a baby bump. And then ever since then, we've been trending down in trajectory as far as population growth rate is concerned. Not the overall growth of population, but the growth rate has went down. So the dollar is constantly trying to deflate itself, and they have to come up with new schemes to devalue the dollar, if that makes any sense, because I know a lot of people are not going to agree with that, but it's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it's funny. This was something I was talking to Sean about earlier. And I guess we can get to it now. One of the things that's sort of notorious about you is that there are a lot of people who just don't, have kind of come after you, and you've been right. You've been if people go back, and I encourage people to go back and look at some of Josh's videos from months before and during, the kind of shutdown, and he was ahead of a lot of these things, but people really felt some kind of way about it. And I think it has to do with, when they look at what normally comes with the recession, they're looking at a bunch of things in the economy. Housing permits are up so they're thinking, the supply is going to be up there by the summer. Retail sales are up, profits are up for businesses, truck shipments are up, job sentiment is up, jobless claims are down, credit spreads are up. But then there are two things that are negative. One is wage growth, and the money supply is weird. And I think I kind of feel that people sort of get upset with you because you're saying, well, the money supply is the most important thing here. And they're kind of trying to say, you really can't just predict a recession if everything else looks like roses. And I feel, you've commented about that a bit on your channel, about how you are sometimes on an island with your view.
Yeah, well, it's not just me. There's a couple other guys on YouTube that talk about it as well. And I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just a subject matter expert on the deal. An expert is going to be somebody like Jeff Snyder that actually has degrees in this, and they actually have credentials to give financial advice, right? Because we don't give financial advice here. We're not allowed to.
Or life advice.
Yeah. Yeah. No advice at all. Advice. Yeah, none. Right. No, but I think a lot of people get it wrong because they like to – They have one worldview, right? The end of the dollar, this is going to be a catastrophe. Russia is going to default. This is going to be terrible. And it's actually, if you pull back and you try to look at this macro view of it, lot of people would look at Russia, for example, as it being a problem, but everything has a asset side and a liability side. It's all about balance sheets, right? Now, if you defaulted on something, the bank's going to come to you and they're going to take all your stuff because they got to recoup, right? If a sovereign nation like Russia defaults on their bond payments, who's going to show up in Russia to start taking assets? So what happens is they default, all their liabilities go away, but they still have all their assets. They still have all their gas, all their oil. And that is not a picture that most people think about when they're talking about these subjects. I would say if Russia defaults on their debt, that's the best time in the world to start buying new Russian debt. That's the best time in the world to get involved in the Russian stock markets. But nobody thinks like that. Everyone likes to FOMO into things. They FOMO in at the top and they sell at the bottom. But in order to sell high, you got to buy low. But the problem is a lot of people don't like buying low because there's all this, this fear in the markets and everything. And just anecdotal evidence in my own life. One of my family members in 2011 was calling me like every other day trying to get me to buy silver because the price was at $50 an ounce. And I was like, no, man, that's not going to happen. You're in a bubble. You're going to get rug pulled. He did the same thing with Dogecoin. He got into that way too late. But I was calling him in March of 2020 and like, dude, silver just hit 1180. I'm backing the truck up. I'm buying all the silver I can. But for some reason, people just, I don't get it. I've showed the chart on my channel before about the psychology of the market. Everyone knows that you got to buy low and sell high, but for some reason they don't see that. And they just hear what they're told on MSNBC and all these other channels and Twitter and everything else. And they believe the narrative, even though it's not true. It's been an age old stigma. Everyone knows in the market, the only people that make money is contrarians. So I don't really know why I get so much hate, but it just is what it is.
Yeah, isn't a lot of that though when you're kind of thinking about it from like just that human perspective. A lot of people, you say that FOMO and they buy at the top, right? They get crushed. They're afraid to buy at the bottom. But right now, you don't really have anywhere to put your money. So for the vast majority of people, right, they're sitting there trying to pump their money into their 401ks, the older citizens who had access to pensions, a lot of their wealth is tied up. So when they get a check right now, if they have any extra like discretionary money that they could sock it away, you look at your bank account, you're getting a negative yield on that. Inflation from the government numbers is almost 8%. So let's just be fair. Let's just say 15. Okay. So if you're not going to hold your money there, it creates this environment of speculation, which of course is going to drive those prices up, right? Until the big players pull the rug out from everybody else. And then all the regular citizens are left holding the bag, basically.
Well, it's not the big players. It's the biggest one of all. It's Uncle Sam. It's the dollar, because like I said, the dollar is always trying to deflate. So we go through these bubbles created by the government spending too much money. And every time they spend money, the velocity of money goes down. So every next successive spending package has to go up and be even bigger. So they have to continually do this over and over again. And you're right when you said that it drives everybody's money into speculation, and the stock market goes up, and Bitcoin goes up, and gold and silver goes up, and until they're just waiting to get rug pulled. Yeah, it's the dollar doing that, because the dollar is constantly trying to go down. But the players are constantly trying to manipulate the price of everything up. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of another. It's like musical chairs. It's an analogy I used a couple of days ago on my channel. That's basically the system that we're in. There's never enough dollars for anyone, ever. And then you have market participants, but there's too many market participants, and they're all going around in this musical chair game trying to get dollars. And by the end of the game, there's only one winner.
Right, so yeah, that's interesting. Dan, you had something you wanted to say?
I think what I'd like to talk to you a bit about, Josh, is sort of the elephant in the room over the past couple of weeks has been the inverted yield curve. Mm-hmm. And you've talked really well about that. And that's particularly, we've seen it with I think the 6 month was 2.4, 5 years 1.9, the 10 years about 2.1. And I think a lot of people also look at the gap between the 5 and the 10 year, and the gap between the 10 and the 20 year. Can you just talk a little bit about what that means again for normal people? Why that inverted yield curve is a scary thing? When you've seen it before, and kind of why it makes you a little nervous.
Yeah, so basically it makes it hard for the banks to make money. That's the problem. So when the yield curve starts to invert, the banks can't make money, so they get tight on their lending. When they get tight on their lending, there's your liquidity. It's basically gone. So then the dollar just starts getting stronger in value. A lot of people like to point at the 2 and 10 because it's almost guaranteed. If the 2 year and the 10, and if those invert, then what that means by people that are watching that don't know what we're talking about, if the 2 year bond, if the interest rate on that goes above the 10-year bond, right? So it's yielding more interest than the 10-year bond. It's inverted. Then the banks can't make money, so liquidity dries up, and you are guaranteed for a recession, which is why I said oil is getting ready to go down, because the last time we saw a peak in oil like this was back right at that 2008 period, and then the recession started, and boom, oil bottoms out, and we just come back down to an average price for, I don't know, over a decade.
Is it also, I mean, is another way to also look at it that, people are selling those short-term bonds, because they're a little bit concerned about maybe the short term. Would that kind of suggest, hey, bonds are? I think a lot of people have trouble understanding bonds because the logic seems a little bit backwards sometimes. It would seem if people are selling their short-term bonds, that maybe that suggests, the longer term of the country is good. So buying a 10, buying a 20 is a smart thing, but the returns on those are really poor. So can you maybe explain what it means when people start selling those short-term bonds? And
right. So there is some truth to that. People will start selling the short-term bonds, and that will drive yields up in the short term because they're worried about the financial future in the very short term, but they'll pile all their money into the long-term bonds for safety. That there is some of that happening. But I think right now, something that a lot of people are not talking about is that the dollar over the last year has went, in the Dixie at least, from 88 to 98. It's went up in value. It hasn't went down, as opposed to as many people think. At this historic time, the Federal Reserve is raising rates, which it does affect the short-term bonds. So if you're talking 1 month, 3 month, a year, 2 years, you can actually pull those up on a chart with federal funds rate, and they correlate, extremely tightly. They correlate, and they have for a long time. But once you start getting out from that, so you're talking your 2 years, your 10 years, 20 years, 30-year bonds, those do not correlate with federal funds rate. They do their own thing. Now, they do tend to go up before the Federal Reserve raises rates, but they also tend to go down before the Federal Reserve lowers rates. They go down first. And so what happens is we now have a situation where the bonds are getting ready to go down on the long end, but the Federal Reserve is artificially pumping up the short-term bonds. So I'm talking about the interest rate, not the price of bonds. So yeah, it's going to cause a recession. It's almost guaranteed at this point because we've seen the 5-year and the 10-year invert. It inverted briefly this past trading week, but the 7-year and the 10-year is still inverted right now as we speak. The 7-year is yielding more. So a lot of people would say that's a guarantee for a recession.
Okay, and basically when you're talking about the DXY in that context, what basically, just for those who don't understand, you're talking about the dollar within a basket of currencies, right? Compared to other currencies like the euro, the won, stuff like that, correct? That's what you're talking about, right?
Right. So if you look at the Dixie, which is a basket, like you said, it's mostly heavily the euro and Japanese yen. Now, if you look at the dollar versus other currencies, the Chinese renminbi is actually doing better than the dollar. And a lot of people love to point to that to say, oh, right, that means that the dollar is going to crash and everyone's just going to start using Chinese money. It's like, no, that's not true, because the way the international world looks at all these currencies as far as value, how much liquidity is there, how easy can it move across borders, and the most important part is, how is the arbitration? How likely are the courts in that country likely to take my money and give me an unfair chance to make my case in front of a judge and jury? Well, no one trusts China to do that. No one trusts Russia to do that. So who's going to be who's it going to be? India? Like, what are we going to go to Switzerland? I don't know. Who actually has the ability to pump all this currency out? Who's going to do it? I'm not saying the dollar's not going to fail in the long run. I do believe that's going to happen at some point, but it's not happening today. It's not happening tomorrow, and it's not going to happen next year. So I don't know what else to say about that.
My automatic light turned off. I'll be right back.
All right, no problem.
There we go. I just have to look alive from time to time. Josh, one thing I want to ask you is, your channel is really designed to help explain all these things to average people and get them interested. And you're obviously very passionate about it. And there's some things that are underlying our economy that are, kind of American, traditionally American problems. We have high household debt. We have a very small amount of savings. Most American families couldn't survive a $500 to $1,000 emergency. That's a car breaking down. Mm-hmm. The forbearance from the CARES Act is coming due. Student loans are coming due for people. Jobs are opening back up, but people are having to drive, and they've moved further away, or they've changed their lifestyle. And so there's a lot of these things that are kind of things that follow us around as Americans. I'm wondering, when you're seeing recession coming around the corner, what scares you about our economy for the average person? That's not necessarily in these numbers, but what kind of concerns you about the people you're trying to reach?
Right, so they're going to be wiped out. If the dollar gets stronger, it means that there's less dollars available, which means it's harder to repay debts. So you end up getting wiped out. You end up having to declare bankruptcy. You get a lot of your assets are taken by the banks. That's definitely a problem. It's not uniquely American. American culture didn't do that for the longest time. That's a more recent advent. I remember my great-grandparents and grandparents literally putting money in their mattress. Like, they would save their money and then go buy a house, or they'd save their money and then go buy a car. And they always had a medical expense fund saved up. But we don't do that anymore. We've been taught over the years to have a credit score, to make sure that you do everything by loan because it's faster and easier that way, which, by the way, drives up home prices. It drives up car prices. It makes everything go up because all these people are walking into banks and getting in this debt, but it also creates more money. So the prices of everything goes up. And then everyone likes to scream inflation. Okay, well, when everything crashes and the dollar gets stronger, tell me how you feel about that inflation when that debt comes due. And that's a huge problem.
Sorry about that, guys. I live out in the boonies, so
no problem.
Price we pay. So I'm assuming you guys were kind of talking about the dollar. Josh, I did hear something before I got disconnected where you said you are kind of predicting a recession when you look at oil prices. And you were talking about how in 2008, we saw that run up in oil price. I think it got up to about $141, something like that, 142, right? And then you see going down to 2014, you see this large crash. Well, the catalyst for the rise in those oil prices in 2008, right? I believe that was something more related to like OPEC, the oil cartel's output. And then leading into 2014, a lot of these oil producers put a lot of things back online. Like they kind of flooded the market, where now this run up in oil prices is a little bit different because, as I've heard, those who are experts kind of speak about this, they say there's been an underinvestment in capital expenditures. So we don't have the equipment. It takes a long time to put these things online. Now we have these other constraints, right? So, we think about all the inputs that it takes. People don't think about it, but fertilizer, everything that we grow in order to create those yields, right? We're looking at natural gas, we're looking at potash, we're looking at phosphate. But one thing is that demand around oil, like the gas in my tank, I still have to get work. Like I still have to get to point A to point B. That doesn't matter if it rises up to 7, 8, 9, 10. Like I have to get out there. I got to get to the grocery store. So what do you see as that catalyst, like for that demand to bring it back down to those levels? Because I don't really feel like people have a choice. I mean, I just saw a video today of some lady just parking by somebody just taking the gas right out of their car. You know, we're already getting there, right? And it's like 420. So I just kind of wanted your thoughts on that.
So that goes to the first point where I was talking about earlier, where the rise in prices is because of supply. It's not a function of printing money or definition of inflation. It's not that. Supply, right? So Russia gets to war. I don't so much just care about the reason for why the supply is going down. It's just a fact that it is. So Russia goes to war. Now we don't have any potash available, so the price of fertilizer goes up, right? That's not a function of money printing. The so-called money printing that everyone likes to point to, that happened in 2020. That happened a long time ago. Now we're having this crisis over in Ukraine, and we can't get fertilizers out of Belarus and Russia, right? So that's the first part, is supply. Secondly, that's where you get the FOMO. So you get speculation into the markets. Everyone on TV, everyone's cousin, uncle, grandma, everybody, they've all heard Russia has all this oil. And since they've gone to war, the price of oil has to go up. So everyone piles their money into all the oil ETFs or wherever they're going to buy it at. And the price shoots up. It's the same thing you see with gold. There was almost no reason for gold to go to $2,000 in 2011, but it did because there was speculators rushed to get into it because Obama had printed all that money through the government loans in 2008, 2009. So people speculated, just like it happened this time. So March of 2020 happens, the crash happens, and then we have CARES Act 1, CARES Act 2, $7 trillion gets printed, and then after that, immediately gold spikes up to 2,000. And then it lulls down because the speculation was over. And now it's trying to find an average price. So, yeah, speculation, shortage of supply. And I know this is not what people want to hear, but you can't explain it with money printing if the money has already been printed, but the dollar has gotten stronger. That does not explain people's inflation narrative. Will it get better? Yes, but it won't stay there long. So that's the cycle that you have. You have government speculation, which is government entering the chat space, if you will, with new government spending, and that drives that commodity cycle. It drives the stock boom. It drives everything up. You get to a point to where the dollar gets too strong, everything crashes, but they don't allow it to crash too long. Maybe 6 months to a year at the most, and then they spend a whole bunch of money, and it shoots everything back up again. That's just the cycle. But the problem now, I talk about this a lot. The problem with that is that every time you do that, it drives down the velocity of money. So you need more and more money every time to pay off debt. So every time they have a spending bill, if they want it to fix the recession problem that they practically caused the first time, if they want it to fix that, each spending bill has to get bigger. And eventually what's going to happen is the interest rates on bonds are just going to go all the way down to the bottom and tank out. And we're gonna be left in a situation where the government can't fix it anymore, and you're gonna have possibly a decade of deflation. Don't know exactly when that's gonna happen, but that's just something I see happen, and that could be the end of the dollar because the dollar then becomes so restrictive and so strong that people can't even get into the market because everything is just, you can't get money. You can't afford anything. It doesn't matter what the price is. No one can get money because the dollar's too strong. So then the world comes together and decides we need to have a Bretton Woods 2 type situation. And they come up with some other, maybe it's going to be the IMF's SDRs. Maybe it'll be a World Bank note. I don't know what it'll be, but eventually we will get off the dollar and move to something else once they get done running this system into the ground.
Yeah. So, and that's something that you see as the end game further down the line, right? And what you kind of talked about with gold, I mean, so what's the point? What's the point of owning gold? Why should somebody hold gold if gold doesn't work in inflation?
Okay,
what am I going to do? I'm just going to look at my coins all day. I mean,
So gold. The function of gold is not price. The function of gold is wealth. That's all gold has ever been. So essentially what you would hope to see is that you take the average earning wage of someone in 1870, and you can actually do a calculation on that. But essentially what you would want to see is that someone from 1870 could take a year's worth of wages, hop into a time machine, come to the future. They should be able to afford the exact same lifestyle as a middle income American home in 2020. So it expands across time. So you can do this on your calculator if you want, but I've sort of memorized this because I was going to do a video on it. But in 1870, I took 19 occupations and averaged down the daily wage that they got, and it came out to $2.05. And they worked an average of 60 hours a week back then. So if you take 365, and then you minus out 1 day a week, that'll leave you at like 313, times that by $2.05 a day, and that gives you $641 a year is what someone in 1870 earned. Now, that's in ounces of silver because it was $1 per ounce of silver. If you take that and divide it by 20, which is what gold was, it was $20 to an ounce. That gives you about 32 ounces of gold is what the average person in 1870 earned. If you then times that to an average price of gold now at $1,900 an ounce, it gets you to $60,000. Wow. So the average person in 1870 in gold makes what the average American today in 2020 makes in terms of gold.
Cash. Yeah.
That's why the price is exactly where it should be now. Now, you're going to get variations on that because the BLS says that the average American earns $53,000. Other studies say 51, and other studies say 69. But in general, it fits right there in that pocket, whether it's $1,700 an ounce or $2,000 an ounce. It's still in that window.
Interesting. Dan, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, since we were talking about gold and everything, Josh, you and I may be one of a couple of the only people who sat up, I guess it was last week, and read the bill that was passed in the middle of the night. And you were looking to see if there was any mention of cryptocurrency, and I was really looking through it to see where they were spending money, and I was really taken aback by the amount of money they're putting into agriculture and agriculture-related things. But the point was, you had previous to that talked a bit about what I like to call the Warren coin, but essentially would be a digital dollar. Mm. It wasn't in the bill, although I believe there was something there in the bill related to asking the FBI or another agency to teach the Congress about.
NDI, National Director of Intelligence.
Oh, we might have lost Dan. Did he go out?
Yeah. So I'll talk to that for a second while we're waiting for him to come back. But the first thing I wanted to go back to is silver, because I know a lot of people are going to ask questions about that. So the gold price should be about what it is right now. Mm-hmm. But if you do the same calculation I did with the average age earner from 1870 until now, silver should be about $95 an ounce. So for the silver community out there, silver is undervalued historically because it has not been a protection of wealth from back in the past until now. You would have lost money if you put your money in silver back then and read it until now. I don't know what he was going to finish that question off with about the digital currency though. So maybe you want to ask the question, or we can wait for him to come back.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to go into, that when you looked at the $1.5 trillion Senate bill.
About that, guys.
Yeah, it's okay. So Josh just touched on silver a little bit. He was just basically saying that if you do the same calculations from 1870 that he did with gold until now, silver would be undervalued in that context because it didn't keep up with that devaluation.
Yeah, it should be about 95 an ounce.
Yeah, so if you just want to go ahead, you touched on the CBDCs about what Josh was speaking of.
Yeah, all I was saying was I would like to hear your sort of thoughts about the digital dollar. I mean, I have my own feeling about the sort of, as again, Senator Warren has been involved in talking about it. She's very anti Bitcoin and crypto. But I wondered what your thoughts are in terms of this recently being an issue discussed in the administration. It didn't make it in this bill, but it does seem like something that has made it into the White House and is along with the changes they made last year related to PayPal, Venmo, and things. So a lot of people see it as a way to search for potential tax revenue or revenue for the government. Do you have any kind of thoughts about what they're doing?
Okay, so to talk about that, I'm going to have to go back. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to connect the dots. So to touch on that, you have to go back to like ancient Rome, and you have to start looking at cycles, because this happened in Greece. This happened everywhere, literally everywhere. You start out first where people simply want to live free and be left alone. And then too many people gather in the same place to do the same thing, and then you get a government. Well, in Rome, you started with the Republic, right? You had senators, you had the upper house, lower. It's basically the same layout we had, different, but essentially a republic, not a democracy, but a republic. And then as that moves on, then you get authoritarianism, then you get dictatorship, then you get the Roman dictators, and eventually that government, because all governments are retarded, they get stupid and do stupid things, and it collapses. It just crumbles, right? So we're on that same trajectory now. I know a lot of people disagree, but if you just simply look at the amount of government regulation that we have now versus what we had in the past, you can easily see a buildup of freedom, a republic, which is what we have, not a democracy, but it's moving down the line ever slowly towards that. Jesus Christ, I got a tongue twister. Authoritarianism. So that's what we're moving towards. And the central bank digital currency, that's the next step, because the government is going to come in and they're going to want to know where you spend your money, what you're buying, where you're going, what you're doing, who you're doing it with. Basically the who, what, where, why, and how. They're going to want to know all of that. And that is what the digital currency is going to give the government the ability to do. It's going to give them, it's also going to give them the ability to be like, hey, you drank too much beer this month, so we're going to turn off your digital currency to where you can no longer buy alcohol, period. And don't even worry about filing taxes anymore, guys. That's fine, because it's going to be every month now. We'll just see what your balance was, and then we're just going to take it right on out. And if you don't have enough, we'll bring your account to negative. So the next time you get paid, you'll dig your own self out of the hole. But we control everything about you now.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Because if you have cash, what are they going to do to stop you if you have cash? You can do whatever you want. And they don't like that.
China has been experimenting already with something very similar.
It's working.
And it's working, and they're also using it to keep statistics exactly on that can change. So, for example, they're kind of morals based. If you are
social credit score.
1 month, it's the beer month, or the Pornhub month, or whatever is the month that gets you less of the digital currency, no matter if you worked for it or not. And that ever-changing guideline is, something that a lot of people see these last couple of years, and where we may be going with another lockdown or so, about control.
So in China, they actually have, I can't remember if it's in Guangzhou or Shanghai, but they have a tower, and they have a 360 camera that's on the top of it, and it's built to 8K. And I don't even know how, I think it's like 100 and something stories up in the air. You can actually go to a website to get to that camera and zoom all the way down, like streets and streets and streets away, and see somebody's face. And of course they have, facial software on all the cameras in China. There was a story of a man in China that got off work, spit on the sidewalk, and from the time he spit on the sidewalk to the time he got to get on his train in the subway, his social credit had already went down, and he wasn't allowed to get on trains anymore.
Yeah, we got to stop that now, because my score is going to be negative. We got to stop it.
But that's also, I can speak to this somewhat because my stepmom's Chinese. She's from Lower Mongolia. It's been in Chinese culture for a long time to kind of bend their will to the government. I mean, if you just look over the course of time, China's culture is very, very old. It's kind of built in their nature to follow dictatorships. But, America was founded on the idea of F you, right? I'm going to do whatever I want. I don't need F you money, just F you just for the hell of it.
Right.
I'm not going to do what you tell me, and the government can kiss my behind. But there's this strange thing recently where people they just love daddy government. And I don't know where that's coming from. That, I mostly talk financial stuff, but I don't know how to fix that one. I guess you could equate it to, the American patriots from the Revolution and the loyalists that were stuck up the British's rear behind. So
yeah, or it's just a lack of, I'm always amazed when I look at political issues in other countries where, and this is a few years ago, but I think it was in Poland, and they caught the president doing something with the finances. People were in the street immediately. He was out immediately. It wasn't, they have a value to the freedoms that they have, and we're kind of very distant, just like we're distant from what we eat, from what we from what we buy. We are distant from our government and those values, and I thought it was really interesting that the White House had this whole the TikTok conference to help educate people about gas prices, and I thought but it's not that they're thinking wrong. I mean, they have to reach people in 14 seconds, and that's all people need. They want that, and but there's a split in that. Sean, do you have some other topics?
Yeah, really, I just I kind of wanted to wrap it up.
Buddy. There you
go. You guys can see me. Am I good to go?
Yeah.
I think what I kind of wanted to wrap it up, because Josh did a good job kind of explaining why people should kind of be concerned about CBDCs, right? Especially, when you're thinking like, hey, they're going to see everything you do. All right. And I know vast majority of people, you guys are just normal, good people, but you don't want everybody to see everything you do. So on the other side of that coin, you have these diehard Bitcoin fans. And I'm a dummy. So I'm very confused about Bitcoin. I just do my best to listen and try to understand. But I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on, does Bitcoin solve this? And also, because I've seen stories where they found who has those Bitcoins. And I know you could do coin joins, you could split them up and you could spread them around the world. Now, my other question is, right, what do people buy with Bitcoin? Because what I have noticed, right, and I'm ignorant to this, is it seems like it's not something that people want to sell. And when they do want to sell it, they want to turn it into their currency. So let's say the dollar in this case. But to me, in that sense, I don't see anybody really making these purchases like transacting with their daily life. Like, I'll be honest with you, if the power shuts off, or let's just say you have portable power and you come to me and you say, hey, Sean, I want some rice, and you try to trade me some Bitcoin, it's not going to happen. Right? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say, you got to go.
There's still ways to get around that. But to answer the first question, does Bitcoin solve this? No. And the second question is, what are people using Bitcoin for? Yeah, it's a speculative asset, but so is gold. And gold used to be money. Let me go back to the first question. Does Bitcoin solve this? No, it doesn't, because we used to have gold, and it was expensive to move around. It was heavy. It was lunky. It was hard to do bank transactions with it, but it protected people's wealth very well. A deflationary currency is definitely what we want. It just makes it really hard for the people in control of money to make money with it. So then, I explained this to you guys earlier. Then you end up in a situation where they're like, well, we don't actually have enough gold. We need more liquidity. So they go to silver. Well, we'll just price it in gold. Well, screw gold and silver. We'll just use paper. If you go to Bitcoin, it's going to be the exact same evolution. You're going to end up in Bitcoin, which is deflationary, just like gold. And then people are going to be like, well, we don't have enough Bitcoin. There's not enough for the entire world to transact in it. There's no liquidity. Let's move over to Litecoin, Ethereum. Let's use one of these other coins. We'll just price it in Bitcoin. Screw Bitcoin. It's too lunky. It's old. It takes 10 minutes to do a transaction. We'll just use this. And then you have the inflationary runaway, or they'll say, hey, we'll just stop using this altogether. We'll go back to paper. Every time throughout history, it's always like this. You start out with hard money, gold and silver, then you move to paper, then the fiat crashes, and then everything blows up. It's just a cycle over and over and over and over again. So will Bitcoin solve this? No, because it doesn't solve the psychology of human beings. The second thing, are people actually, there are places, like there's towns in Germany, there are places where you can go buy food and whatever else you want to with crypto. But yes, it's a speculative asset because everything's priced in the dollar. I don't care what it is, all the way up to the air you breathe. It's all priced in the dollar. So everyone around the world is trying to play this big game of musical chairs to get more money so they can continue living their life. So they come up with different schemes, whether that's Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, whether that's selling gold to people because of scary inflation, or even the people that scheme to sell you stocks in the stock market. It's all just a musical chairs game to get in early, sell first, get all the money, and be set. That's all it is. It's all for the dollar. Everything's for the dollar. I've heard all the excuses. Even people say, yeah, but energy moves the world. Yeah, and it's priced in the dollar. So all those people saying that oil is going to blow up and it's going to go to $1,000 a barrel and kill the economy. No, it won't, because if people don't have money to buy it, then guess what? It don't get sold, and then the price goes down. Happens every time.
Josh bringing the heat right there at the end for y'all. For all you people who are all in on Bitcoin, I'll be careful now.
No, I'm not saying I'm against Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is a good solution because it is deflationary. No one owns it, right? No one can change it because, like look at Ethereum. There's a guy that owns it, Vitalik, whatever his name is. He can push buttons and change it overnight. He can change all that. You can't do that with Bitcoin. I'm a fan of Bitcoin, but all I'm saying is it's just going to lead to the same problems that we've had in the past using gold and silver. Right. So unfortunately, there's just going to have to be a lot of people die. I'm sorry. I've done the video before, but there's just a lot of people are going to die. No one wants to talk about it. It's uncomfortable, but people are going to die a lot.
All right, Josh. Hey, man, we really appreciate you coming on here. I'm sorry about the audio issues initially. We're gonna have to redo this, and it'll definitely be better. But I think we really did get some good stuff from you and some good content, and we really appreciate you. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave us with? Anything last that you wanted to say before we wrap this up?
Just keep your eyes on the bond market. As soon as that 2 and 10 inverts, it's a guarantee that the stock market's going to crash. It's almost guaranteed now, but just keep your eyes on that.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you.
Yep, no problem.